back. If you haven't seen my videos before, I'm Ross the Oliver Man, and this is part 4 of my equipment tour, the 150 series tractors. And I figured I'd lump them together, and then in the next video we'll do 55 series and newer. So we'll go down here to the other end and start with the 100 series. So here we go. So for 100 series tractors, I have two, and they're both 1800s. This one right in front of me is an A series, and then over there in the back is a C series. And I know you've seen the C series in a few of the videos, you know, working on the fuel system and whatnot. So I'm sure you'll see it again coming up this spring. But we'll start here with the A series. So this is a 1962 Oliver 1800 Series A checkerboard. And they got that name, of course, by the decals that look checkerboard. This was, of course, before the time when Oliver had bought Cockshut. And Cockshut is where they got the name spears that we all know and remember. So this is before that. And this is actually the last year of the 1800A, I believe. And this tractor is probably one of the ones that I bought that required the least amount of work. I drove it home from the guy's house. He didn't live very far from me, but he had it advertised in the Farm World newspaper that goes all over, and I saw it in there and then went and looked at it. This tractor, I believe, has a later engine in it because the 1800A had the cast iron Schebler carburetor, and this one's got the later aluminum. And we can confirm this, of course, by looking here at the block numbers. So I would say that this is a complete motor drop-in out of something, and you can kind of tell that because the hood hole is not quite the way it should be. But other than that, it is a tractor that runs excellent. Right now, the only thing it really needs other than cosmetics is last summer, just before I started YouTube, I was cutting hay with it and the steering box started leaking. So I'm gonna have to take it apart and reseal it. You can see it's dripping already from just moving it out here. So that is something that's going to have to be addressed. This tractor does not have a hydropower. It is just a straight shaft, and there's what it looks like. I'm actually missing, there was a tin cover that goes over that, but I don't have it. And you know, when these came out, if you look at the experimental pictures of the experimental tractor, it shows what appears to be another version of like the power booster drive that was in the 770 and 880s. And I guess they realized that that just was not a good design and wasn't going to work. So when these came out, it was straight shaft. But then later on, they came out with the hydropower, and then you could go ahead and put that in here. I've thought about putting one in, but I don't know. This is the way it is, and it's just fine. I mean, I don't have to have it. This tractor spends a majority of its time. I cut hay with it on my 1120 Heston mower, and then I also used it in the fall to run the auger. But this year, since this hydraulic leak, I used the 1855. But anyway, it's time to do some cosmetics to it. But basically, it's a pretty good old tractor. Runs good, and like I said, probably one of the ones that I got the least amount of work into to get it to use it. But we're going to tear into that steering cylinder sometime, so I'm sure that'll be a video in the not too distant future. So 1962 Oliver 1800A series. This is a 1963 Oliver 1800C series, and this one has the what I call the underslung front axle. I think that they called it a row crop utility axle in the parts book, but Anyway, it's supposed to give you a shorter turning radius. However, using it, I am not impressed with that it's really that much better than the later 55 series row crop front axle, but it's something different. By this time, it has the name spears. The B series actually had the name spears as well. One distinguishing thing, and this tractor is, I see the birds have been in here, but a C series has the later style dash with the throttle on the side, whereas a B series still has the under the steering wheel throttle, like on the A series. This right over here would be what a B series would have on it. So a B series is basically like a cross between the two, and then this is the sort of design that everybody finally recognizes. Name spears, throttle on the side of the dash. And this tractor I got from a neighbor who had bought it from somewhere. He saw it sitting alongside of the road, and he thought it was neat with that axle. And I don't know, he'd sat in his barn for several years and he never did anything with it, and finally it didn't run. So I ended up buying it, and we towed it home and found out that it had a couple bent push rods where they jumped out, you know, and tried to start it. So anyway, I got those fixed. When we towed it home, one of the tires was going flat, and I ended up taking them off of the rims and cleaned up the rim, and had to put a new tube in it. I don't remember if I did both sides. I think I just did one side. It has this full vision cab on it, but it is in very sad and rough shape, which is a shame because it's kind of an unusual cab around here. But I need a right-hand door if I were to keep it, and I'm not sure that I'm going to keep it. I like the steps on it. It's easy to get into, but I think that the cab is probably going to part ways with this tractor. I've got that year-round cab off the 1955 I might put on it, just because I use it to spray with, and I really don't want to be wearing a lot of the chemicals like what we use now, so I may end up doing that. This thing, I really haven't done that much to it. I mean, the videos you saw on it, that's probably the most work I've really done to it. I mean, I just got it running and then started using it, and I still haven't figured out all its quirks. So it's got some issues that need straightened out. It needs tie rods on the front end. They're getting kind of loose, but really, I haven't done anything with it. So it's going to be a work in progress, but as long as I can use it, I'm going to go with it. I put these weights on. This is a stack of weights that came off the 1955 when I got it, and I put suitcase weights on it. So anyway, this front weight here is kind of odd, and I asked about it one time, and you know what it must have come off of, because you see it's got different pattern. It's just got round holes instead of the oblong holes where you could hang it on. And somebody said that these came off of a fork truck, but I have no way of knowing that. I don't know, but anyway, it fits on there. So that's what we've got for that setup. And when the tank is full of water, you need that to keep it balanced. And so I've used it for a couple years, and it's doing the job. I mean, it's nothing fancy. That cab is just really a piece of crap, but hey, for now, that's what I'm using. And like I said, it'll probably be in upcoming videos, and we'll do some more stuff to it. But there is a 1963 1800 C series. Here we have a 1966 1550, and you've seen this tractor in several videos before, and I've told the story all about it. This is a handy little tractor. I really enjoy driving it. It runs good. It's another one that was not a runner when I got it. I worked on a little Ford front wheel assist tractor for a guy, and this is what I took as part of the payment, because I didn't have one of these, and I take Oliver's as currency, as I've said before. So really, I haven't done a whole lot to it. I did, of course, like I mentioned in that other video, I've done the usual tune-up, spark plugs, new wires, everything. I did paint the grill because it, of course, was rusty. Front weight, put that on. It didn't have any weights on it. It had 14-inch wide tires on it, or tall, you know, they were wider than they're supposed to be, and they were 14 inches. So I put these back on like they're supposed to be. These are 616, so now it looks like it's supposed to. And really, again, I have done not a whole lot to it. I use it on the 356 mower, which you saw in that video. It's still hooked up to it, and that's its job around here, and it does it pretty good. It is going to need in the future, which I'm sure you'll get to see, is wherever the valve stem is, and I can't see, I'm missing. Oh, well, this one's not too bad, but the other side is really bad. It's starting to rot around the valve stem hole, so we're going to dismount both of these tires and clean them up and paint them inside and weld those holes up, because these are almost new tires on the tractor. I mean, and I would really hate to destroy a set of tires that's in that good a shape just because I was too lazy to fix a rim. So that's going to be up on the list of things to do this year as well. Really not much more to say about it that I haven't already said in that other video. So, a 1966 Oliver 1550. Next, we have a 1965 Oliver 1650 diesel, which you've seen before. It's my loader tractor. It's got a 1610 Oliver loader, which was made by Schwartz. And this tractor, when I bought it, it was destined for the junk pile. It had changed owners probably 4 times in about a month's time. Everybody who bought it thought that they were going to get it going real easy, I guess, and make money. And no, it was not that way. I can put in some pictures of how it looked inside, but it was just totally garbage. The motor was just probably one of the worst I've seen. I had to drive the pistons and sleeves out as an assembly and then bust the sleeves off of the pistons with a hammer to be able to get the rods out. So I tracked down the original owner, who lived on the other side of the county from me, and this was his dad's tractor. When I bought it, it had a Schwartz wide front axle on it, and one of the spindles, not the spindle itself, but the housing that it's in, was busted. And so it, you know, when you can see from the pictures, one wheel was going one way, one's going the other way, and that front end was just in terrible, terrible shape. So I got a hold of this guy, and he told me the story, and the story was that they had just had the tractor overhauled, and they were bush hogging with it along the road, and he hit a light pole with the front end of the tractor, and that's what broke that housing. And so he pulled it alongside the barn and left it outside all winter without the exhaust covered, which is a no-no. And then the next spring, he said when he went to start it, it wouldn't start. He pulled the dipstick out and saw that it was full of water, and so he just left her sit. And it had a loader on it. It had a 1610 loader on it, but by the time I got the tractor, the loader had disappeared. So I don't know who ended up with that along the way, but anyway, so this poor tractor, I mean, it had been in excellent shape, and then all at once, you know, just through not thinking about putting something over the exhaust, it became instantly garbage. So he told me that they had used it for years. They had switched and put the Schwartz wide front on it because they were spraying with it, and it had saddle tanks on it its whole life. And boy, that explains why that front axle was so sacked out. It carried a lot of weight, and that aftermarket front axle really wasn't up to that task. So anyway, when I got it, I took it all apart, and with the idea of doing what I'm doing with it right now. I needed a loader tractor, and so I fixed it up, overhauled the engine, found a loader from a guy in Kentucky. He brought it up here, and that was an excursion in itself. the loader, when he came to bring it up here, he picked the worst day of the year. It had just snowed a whole bunch, which is unusual for this area, really. I mean, there was several feet of snow, and it was drifting, and the highways were covered, and here he comes pulling in with this long, like a 40-foot homemade gooseneck trailer that looked like they had welded 6-inch pieces of steel is all they had to make this trailer, and just welded, you know, it was just something else. And comes in with an old dually pickup and 6 bald tires on it practically, in this homemade trailer. The loader's on the front of the trailer, and there's a ditch witch on the back of the trailer. And the first thing he did when he got to the end of my driveway was slide the whole rig in the ditch on its side. So I spent all afternoon trying to get him out of there, and we eventually unhooked the truck from the trailer, and I pulled the truck up out onto the road. And then I took the, I had another loader tractor here I was borrowing, and I picked up the front of the trailer and got it kind of on the road. We hooked it back up to the truck, and then as he pulled out, I lifted up on the back of the trailer, which had that ditch witch on it, and got it back up on the road. And it was a real ordeal because it was so slick on the road that I couldn't hardly do anything. I couldn't get any traction, and everything was sliding around. But I finally got it. We actually ended up, when it was on the side in the ditch, I said, let's just unchain the loader to lose a little bit of weight. So we did that, and it flipped over into the woods on the opposite side of the road, and I went back and got it later. And we got out of there with, I mean, I don't want to say little effort. It was less effort than I thought it was going to be when I saw what had happened, but we made it, and I got the loader put back on this tractor. Another thing the guy had told me was that it was going to need a hydraulic pump. It was going to need a hydraulic pump. They had used it, and it was just getting weak. It wouldn't lift anything, and it had to have a hydraulic pump. It was totally junk, and that was not the case, and I will show you what it was. So it's nice that I cleaned it all up to do a video on it, but anyway, this tractor, there is a link that adjusts your lifting. And what was wrong was the same thing like I've talked about in some of the other videos. When you have it all the way up, you should be able to lift it another inch or so past all the way up. Well, they had it maxed out, and it was blowing the relief valve. So if you had the 3-point arms up, the hydraulic pump didn't hardly do anything. So that's the only thing that was wrong with it. I've been using it the whole time, and it's just now getting to the point where I think it probably could use a hydraulic pump, but really what it needs is a filter change and good cleaning, because I'm sure it's got moisture in the hydraulic system from just getting used all the time and being, you know, in less than ideal conditions. I'd really like to paint it, but you can see, look how muddy it gets feeding in the winter. The string gets wrapped up on the axle. I have to keep cutting that off all the time. It's just, when you use something every day to feed with, it definitely has its share of wear that happens, but it's a good tractor. I mean, it's not a very easy starting tractor with that Lenovo style head, but once you get it running, it just purrs. So I'm not unhappy with my purchase. I got it for cheap enough that after doing everything I've done to it, it is a good investment. I mean, it's less than what you would have in it if you went out and bought one set up like this. So, you know, another $1,650 with a loader. So I don't think that's too bad. You'll probably see it. We're going to do some more stuff to it too this year, I hope. I really need to rebuild that hydropower because it's making some noises that probably are singing me the song that it wants to be rebuilt, but I may just push it till it's totally garbage and do that. This, I plumbed up the loader for Power Beyond. People are always asking about that, and then it doesn't tie up your remotes. So you have to take this plug out, and then there's a set of threads back in there you need to put a plug into, and then that redirects the flow of oil and sends it to your valve, and then you can return it back where it needs to go. And so that's a pretty good setup, but if you ever took the valve off the tractor, you'd have to hook these two hoses together so the oil could circulate through the system. Otherwise, you'd be back to blowing the relief valve again. And this tractor has, I guess I should have thrown in how many hours it had, but it has 8,459 hours on it, including all the hours I've put on it. So, you know, that's getting up there. I don't know how many hours. I probably have that written down somewhere, how many it has since I overhauled it. But anyway, I put new tires on it here not too long ago, a couple years ago. So, like I said, 1650 diesel that is the loader tractor, and it gets used almost every day. Here we have a 1964 1650, and this is one of the tractors I grew up on that we've had the whole time. And boy, if it could talk, it probably would have a lot to say. My best guess is that the thing has at least 10,000 hours on it. From the time I was a kid until probably about 5 or 6 years ago, the tack cable was not hooked up. And based on the amount of hours it has, I would say it's easily over 10,000 hours. It's been overhauled probably 3 times, I think. And it's probably getting up to where it could use it again. For years, this was the first, well, let me back up there. I guess I'll tell the story about, we have a 74H corn picker. And my grandpa and his dad bought this picker together. They bought it to replace the number 4 picker that they had on the 77, which I talked about in that other video. And they got this 74H picker. It was obvious the 77 wasn't up to that task, so they got a 1650 diesel. And that was the first diesel tractor they'd really had. I guess great-grandpa did have like a little Ferguson or Massey Ferguson 65 diesel, so I guess it wasn't the first diesel they had, but it was a bigger diesel. And so they put this in the diesel tractor in the corn picker, and my grandpa ran it for like 3 days continuously, non-stop, picking corn. And he got the hiccups, of all things, from the smoke, the diesel smoke coming out of it. And he got the hiccups so bad that he couldn't eat, and they just wouldn't quit. And they took him to the doctor finally, and the doctor said, you know, just might as well go pick out a casket because there's nothing we can do for you. And so he laid in the house for 3 or 4 days until finally he got over the hiccups. And he said, I will never own another diesel tractor after that. And he never did his entire life. So he went out and he bought this 1650 gas, and his brother ended up with that 1650 diesel. And then Grandpa put the picker on this one, and this is what he ran in the picker for years and years and years. Since it was in the picker, the headlights were never hooked up growing up because they kept taking the fenders off. So I never had headlights until I fixed them. When it was in the picker, it had caught fire at least twice. And so it was taken into town, and the dealer worked on it and repainted it. And I need to do a repaint on it again because I repainted it once years ago to try to save it a little bit, and it's not the right color, and it really bothers me. So I'm going to have to do that. But anyway, so it's had multiple wiring harnesses on it. It's had lots of paint jobs. It's had several overhauls. It is just... It has a tremendous amount of hours, this tractor. And again, when people say, what are the last, tractor you'd get rid of? This is, one of the last 2 that would leave here. So, it's never going anywhere as long as I'm here. I don't know, there's just so many things to say about it because it's been here so long. I've got, I had to put a hydraulic pump in it. If you've never been into the hydraulic system on those, the old style hydraulic pump had a tube, and the tube would wear a hole in it. When I took it out, it had already been brazed up once, and you know, the hydraulic pump was just totally shot by then. So I put a new hydraulic pump in it. It gets used a bunch, not so much anymore now that there's more tractors here to take some of the load off of it. But anyway, I'd like to do some more cosmetic stuff to it to get it in a little better shape. It needs the hydropower rebuild on it too, because it has not worked correctly since I was probably 5 or 6 years old. We took it to our dealer, and I guess I would have probably been, I would have had to probably been 10 or 12 years old when this happened, because our dealer quit in the mid-90s, and then it became a New Holland dealer, and that's when they kind of quit handling all of our parts and everything. But anyway, they said we had taken it in there, I guess Grandpa did, to have this fixed, and they couldn't figure it out. I guess all the people who had worked on them had quit or moved on or whatever. So they sent it down to another dealer, to Wright Brothers down in Borden, Indiana, and they were working on it. And at the time they worked on it, supposedly was the same time that the guy's wife passed away. And so I don't know if he just lost the motivation to do it or what happened, but he bolted it back together and sent it back up here and said he didn't want to do it. And so our dealer did something to it, and Grandpa said that they told him that it was always in direct drive. It was locked in direct drive. Well, that's not really true, because the way they're made is they start out in low and they shift up to high, and this one seems to have a mind of its own. It'll do whatever it wants. It'll be in low sometimes, then it'll upshift to high, then it goes back to low, and somehow it's still going. It hasn't burned up or smoked or anything. So I don't know. I have another hydropower to use for pieces, so this is another one I want to tear apart sometime and just see. I'm curious to see what is going on in it, why it's doing this, because it really doesn't make sense that it could last this long in the shape that it's in, but it has. So that is something that we're going to dive into here one of these days. Like I said, really the only thing, it could probably use some leaks fixed and stuff. I've had, what have I done to it really? I mean, just whatever it needed over the years as we were using it. Most recently, I guess, I have put a head gasket on. Dad was using it to unload corn or something one time, and I don't know, was in there messing around and not paying attention to the tractor, and it overheated, and so we put a head gasket on it, and that took care of that. Several years, well, I guess it was the same time when it did that, the distributor absolutely would not work anymore. The original style distributor had like a vacuum advance. So I got one of these replacement distributors, which have since been discontinued and you can't get anymore. So I think they now have a new solution, but this was a Mallory distributor, and so I had to put that on, and that got it back in business. I just use it for different things around here, just depends. I used it to grade the driveway in that video with the land plane, and so this tractor was probably, I don't know if it was one of Grandpa's favorites, but he used it all the time. He kind of said he was saving the other one, you know, because it was the new tractor. So this is the one that got used twice as often. He sprayed with it for years. That was its big job. It was almost always hooked to the sprayer. I guess it just whatever. He did plant corn with it, whatever. It was just a tractor, you know. He used it. Like he said, he was saving the other one, and if he had another helper, the other person got to drive the 1655, and that's what I drove all the time when he and I worked together. So it's just been a good tractor. I mean, it's got a lot of battle scars from just doing everything around here, and like I said, it's one of the last ones that'll leave if that ever has to happen. So 1650 gas, that has been in my family. I guess not, it wasn't new when Grandpa got it. It was about a year old, and our salesman, like I've talked about before, was the kind of guy that he wouldn't quit till he sold you something. And Grandpa told him he wanted a 4-bottom plow tractor, and like the next day or so, here he came driving in with this, with a 4-bottom plow hook behind it. He had went to some other guy's farm and traded him a bigger one, and then drove this one over here. So we're the second owners, but we've had it by far the longest. So anyway, 1650 gas. Here we have a 1965 1650 gas. This tractor is kind of in the dead row. I bought it initially for parts, and now there's a reason that I can't part it out, and I'll show you that in a second. But I was kind of ticked off when I went, because I called this guy on the telephone, and I had wanted it for rear tires. The rear tires looked better than what was on my loader tractor 1650, and I couldn't tell from the pictures he'd taken whether they were 34s or 38s. So I asked him, I said, are those, 16 934s? Oh yeah, that's what they are. And I asked him, I said, is the hydropower good? Does it work good? Because I wanted that for this other one. And he said, oh yeah, it shifts great. Well, when I get there, it was 38-inch tires. He'd taken the starter off. I don't know if he thought he was going to keep that or what. And then when I got to looking at it, this is not a hydropower. But this is the only reason I ended up buying it and didn't just turn around and leave. And that is because this tractor has a creeper drive transmission. And this is the first one I have ever had my hands on or seen in person that had that setup. And so that's why I went ahead and bought it. I really need to do something with it. What's wrong with it is he quit using it because it has a tick in the motor. You can hear it. It's not really a hard knock, but it sounds like it's on the upper end. And I need to tear it apart and see. I really feel like it's probably a wrist pin bushing has come out, and that's kind of what I'm thinking it is. It did run, because I did idle it very gently onto the trailer and very gently off the trailer, and I've never run it more than that. So I really need to do something about it. I had thoughts of just getting rid of it and trading it. There was a guy who really wanted it, and he had a 1950T I'd really like to have, so I don't know if that deal is going to happen or not. But I don't really need 3 1650s, but this tractor is unusual enough that I really hate to part it out. And I don't know, I don't know what the right solution is, but the fact is, people said, well, I'll buy that creeper drive unit. Well, it's not just this. You need the transmission too, because the transmission, the gear ratios and stuff are different. And it also has, which is missing on this one, you can kind of see down in there, it's supposed to have a deal in here where when you shift it into creeper drive, it blocks out so you can't shift it into certain gears. And that arm is missing. So it doesn't have that. But when I did have it going, I did put it in creeper drive and put it in the lowest gear. And I'll tell you what, I think it's pretty slow. I mean, if you had a vegetable farm or something and you needed to do cultivating or whatever, that would be dandy with this, because it is a real slow unit when it's in that creeper drive position. It actually has a tag on it that says Stokely Van Camp. I don't know if you can see that or not. So it was definitely used at a vegetable farm there. But I know really nothing about it. I know the guy was using it. He had several tractors. He had a few 1800s and an 88 and this. And then when this messed up, he decided to sell it. The guy, that was another reason I guess I bought it, is I let my emotion kind of get to me. When the guy came out, he was totally in a wheelchair, almost completely paralyzed. you know, I shook his hand and it was like limp. So I felt kind of bad for him, so I went ahead and bought it, even though it wasn't what I thought I was getting. But I think I didn't do too bad on it, considering the fact that it's got the creeper drive, and that's unusual. It, like I said, I really know nothing else about the condition because I haven't run it. So that may be something I dive into hopefully soon, because it really needs something going on with it other than just sitting here. But it's just hard to get enthused about it. It's just not really, you know, I've got two 1650s. This doesn't necessarily excite me that much, but I figured if I got it fixed up, I'd put a narrow front end on and put it in a corn picker and just leave it. But that really doesn't do it justice either for something that's, you know, set up in an unusual way with that different transmission. But this has the front wheels off of the 1550 I was telling you about. That's what was on it when I got it. So, but there is a 1650 with a creeper drive transmission, and like I said, I don't know if you'll see it again or not. I may sell it or trade it, or who knows, but for now it lives here, so there we go. Finally, here is our 1850 diesel project that we are going to possibly make purple. You've seen it in some of those other videos, and I need to get back on it. This tractor was parted out basically, and I've started putting her back the way it should be, but it's going to be a long road. The dash was totally destroyed on the original. I have it, but it was busted, and I had this good dash off of an 1800. Actually, it came from the same guy who had that 1650 creeper drive, parted out one of his 1800s, and this whole dash assembly came from there. I thought I could use a spare steering motor, you know, so I'll just use this. I put the 1850 tag on here, so it's the way it should be. But I really need to knock off the shift pattern and that other thing, because that was not a 50 series thing. So I was kind of torn on whether I should even put the serial number tag back on, because this works out to, it's a 1967, but you know, there's really no, this isn't going to be the same tractor as what it started out at the beginning of its life, because it's already got a lot of pieces on it that didn't come down the assembly line with it. You know, the front end came off of something different, because the ones I got were gonna need work, and this one was better. There's just, the dash is different, you know, everything is just kind of, it's all 1850 stuff, and it's Oliver parts, but it's really not what it is. But since I'm doing this on YouTube, I feel there's enough documentation that whenever I'm done, nobody will, who owns this after I'm gone, will buy it thinking that it was anything more than what it is. It's you know, the back wheels came off of my 1855 when I bought it. The rear end was there, and the tub came with it. I got the dash, I got some of the sheet metal, I got the grill, I got some of the 3-point arms, PTO unit, which had gotten taken off of it, so I need to get working on that and get it sealed up again. It's kind of dirty in there. So I don't know, I hope I get this going sometime in a reasonable amount of time, but I just have a bad habit of accumulating things, and so hopefully because of YouTube I'll get this going sometime. I got to strip that dash down and change it over. It needs the right style gauge deal here, because the 1800 didn't have all the gauges like the 1850. So I don't know, it is what it is. Hopefully we'll get it done sometime. And I instead of just buying one that ran, I felt like putting this together, I wouldn't feel so bad about painting it purple, because you know, I hate to take a nice green one that runs good and everything, and then turn it into a purple tractor. But I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, I'd like to have a green one too, I guess is what I'm saying. I need more than one. But this one, I'm gonna have, since I've had it all apart, I think I'll probably start painting as I go here sometime. And then I'll have to make sure I keep it in the shed so it doesn't go downhill while I'm working on it. But it's possible that soon it will be back up and going. It's got a good rear end and hydraulic unit on it. It just, you know, needs to get the project going. So 1850 diesel in pieces. I'm gonna go ahead and throw this in here, even though it's not an Oliver, but it has only been on this farm since it was new. And this is a 60s model, I don't know what year, 2020 John Deere HU, which is a high utility, which is kind of unusual. I've sunk a bunch of money into this thing in the last year, getting it going, because it's just been sitting in the shed doing nothing. Grandpa bought this brand new, and I guess what he was doing is he shopped around to all the dealers and told them he wanted a 4-bottom tractor that you could still put a loader on and use, you know, to do that kind of job, and he wanted to be able to get it in the barn. And this was the one that came in the cheapest, and it has certainly, at least in my eyes, proved to be the cheapest, because it's had a lot of issues over its time. But I mean, when it was new, he didn't have hardly any troubles with it. And this was by far, I think, his favorite tractor, just because he bought it new, and I guess you never forget your first. So here it is. But it just was the tractor, loader. He bought the roll guard later. It's got a factory roll guard on it, but it came a little bit later. The biggest flaw in these, I have found, is that the front end is really not heavy enough to do this loader work. The front end was just totally destroyed, and we used it like that for years, and it was so dangerous. I mean, it's amazing that we didn't die, because you could steer it almost a complete revolution before the front wheels would turn. There was that much slop in the steering. And you just had to know when you drove it down the road that as soon as you felt it break away, you better slow down and start turning, and then you could, you know, save your life and keep going. And we used it that way for years, and he didn't want to do anything about fixing it. You know, he said it'd be too expensive to fix. Well, it was expensive to fix, but I kind of like being alive too, so I felt like it was worth it. I see that my brand new screen I have dented. That's nice, but that's fine. That's going to happen again. It got parked, well, I guess I'll go back in time. When I was a kid, we used it, and then it got to where it needed overhauled. It would not run hardly at all. I don't think it ran at all at last, but it sat in the shed for a year or so, and then they came and got it and took it into the dealer and overhauled it. And the dealer really raked him over the coals at the time. It was in there for a long time. I mean, it was in there 6 months probably. And every time he'd ask, he'd say, "Oh, we're waiting on parts, Well, he finally got it back, and they charged him more than he paid for it new, which, I mean, that happens as stuff goes up in price. But the thing that I thought was, they charged him all this money to fix it, and they didn't even hook up stuff right. The foot throttle didn't work anymore, and they didn't really, you know, go above and beyond to take care of the customer. They just, seems like they did the minimum they could and charged a lot for it. So I never have really been too fond of this color green for, you know, reasons like that. But this is another tractor that's never going to leave here, because it's only been here. I have spent, I don't know, last year I put a new hydraulic pump on it. I totally rebuilt the front end. I took it and all apart, had it machined out to put a bushing in, and then bought a new steering arm set up, because that steering fork that's goofy looking in there, originally had a needle bearing in it, and I guess when that went out is what caused a lot of the trouble, and then it never got replaced, and then it wore the axle housing, and so I just had it machined out, and we put a bushing in where I can grease it, and so as long as I grease it, it'll probably be fine. The front rims were junk. They had worn so thin that this outside lip was gone, and it just had a little bit of metal holding the tire on, and I thought that was kind of dangerous. So it got 2 new front rims and tires. It's got several new hydraulic hoses I had to make. We put, several years ago when Grandpa was still using it, he put 1 new rim on it. We got, I think that's this one, and we ordered it from the tire shop, and it even came yellow. And so we put a new tire and rim on that because the other one rotted in 2, and you know, so there was that. Well, then several years later, this tire blew. He got a new tire, put it on the old rim, and the old rim was doing the same thing. Finally, when I got it going last year, that old rim was separating so bad, I thought, this is silly. So this is actually, I found a good used rim off of a tractor that had been parted out at like a 2510 or something, and so I painted it up and put it on here and remounted the tire on. What else have I done to it? Just a lot of stuff. New power takeoff shield. The original was just totally gone, destroyed. It leaks out of the hydraulic couplers like I guess all of the John Deeres do. I don't know. I guess that's a common thing. I don't know. I haven't looked into seeing what it takes to rebuild those, but that's something that I might have to do here soon, because I don't know, you know. I had to put 1 new lifting link. This one was junk, and this one is junk too now, so I need to get one and replace. You can get those Chinesium, so I'll probably do that. That's what this one is. I guess I'll get that one and put it on that side. This clip, hold the top link up. I got that from the dealer still. They still make that. Put the seat shock back together and all that, because that was busted out of there and destroyed. And I do not recommend doing that. If you have to replace this, if you've got a John Deere tractor with this style seat, they sell this new as an assembly with the spring and the shock on it. Pay whatever it takes and buy it that way. Do not think you're going to save money and put that shock in yourself, because this was a pain in the behind to try to compress that shock or that spring and get that all put back in there. Just, it's not worth it. I wish I would have paid the extra 50 bucks and bought it ready to slap on. But anyway, it is what it is. I don't know. I've always thought it maybe was kind of unique, because you never see a high utility. You see the low down ones. This reminds me, before I put it back in the shed, I've got a dust cap in my pickup I hope will fit. I ordered one for it, and it just fell out. It wouldn't fit at all, so we tried again, and I think I got 2 or 3 different sizes, so I'm hoping I can find one that fits. But it's just, and this is an earlier one. From what I understand, it has a separate power steering hydraulic pump up in the front, and that's a lot of problems too. He had trouble with that over its life. I think it's leaking right now, actually, looking at it. But he said he had to take it back, and they had to shim it down or something and turn the pressure down, because it kept blowing the seal out. The later ones, the steering ran off of the main hydraulic pump in there, and this is just, I don't know. I don't want to upset you. If you like John Deere, more power to you, but there's a lot of stuff on this that proves to me things shouldn't be designed this way. But anyway, it's the biggest thing I think that does it a lot of harm is the fact that the brakes run in the hydraulic oil. It is a common system, and all your brake shavings go right into your hydraulic oil, so that ends up everywhere. And that's what it was when I put this together and started taking stuff apart. Like, for instance, I took this plate off here and I dug handfuls of brake lining out of there. And I just think it's much better to have separate compartments for different things, but it is what it is. It's a handy tractor just because it's got this manure fork bucket on, so you can dig holes and stuff with it. But like I said, it's gonna stay here just because it's always been here, and I've spent a ton of money on it in the last year. I decided it didn't do any good to just sit there and rot. It needed to be doing something, because if I let it go too far, I wouldn't want anything to do with it. So 1960 something, I don't know, John Deere 2020 HU. Well, I think we'll call this the end of this video. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, subscribe to my channel so you don't miss the next part. And as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.